Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Spiritually Speaking. I am Dee, and today my guest is Cam Knight, and I'm super excited to talk to him because he teaches how to go inside yourself to unlock whatever it is that enables you to just do the damn thing. So, Cam, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Dee. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
You're very welcome. And I'm so happy to have you here. And you have also written quite a few books, Cam, and had like a world traveling experience. So I'm excited to see where you want to start. And then we're just going to dig into this amazing topic.
Sure, I'll just start by introducing myself and then I'll introduce the topic of resistance and we can just go from there. So, my name is Cam Knight. I'm a mentor, international speaker, and an author of a dozen books, many of them that you see behind me, in the area of mental, physical, and emotional performance. And for as far back as I can remember, I have been a fairly driven individual. What I say is, it's kind of hard not to be living in the culture and society that we are with so much inspiration and motivation. I mean, it's really everywhere. It's in our social media, it's in the movies, it's in Oprah. And as a result, I've always wanted to do more and be more successful in life. And although I've had my fair share of success, and I use that word fair share because what I set out for was much bigger and grander, and I didn't necessarily reach it all the time. And I wondered why that was. Why is it if I want to do something, I know what to do, I know how to do it, and I have the motivation and desire to do it, but for one reason or another, I can't or don't do it. And at the time, there were no clear answers. The answers that I came across that people were more or less saying was you need better beliefs or you need motivation and discipline. And I think there are pieces of they are pieces of the puzzle, but they're not the whole puzzle. And over the last 15 to 20 years, that question always lingered in my mind. Every time I felt stuck, I wondered why. Why can't I get stuff done? Why do I keep spinning my wheels? Why don't I just do this dang thing so I can get the result that I want? And the more books I read, and the more coaching I did, and the more seminars I attended, the more I learned about the complexities of not just the human brain, but the human experience. And over time, my mind kind of came to this conclusion like, wait a minute, there's a part of our brain designed to hold us back. There's a part of our brain built to keep us from making progress. And I call this part resistance. And it's this brick wall that we hit anytime that we want to do something, but we can't.
Yeah. And that's what I'm most excited for you
Yeah,
to talk about, Cam, today, because as I discussed with you prior to us recording, this is, I feel like something that I have experienced myself because I have all these
yeah,
great ideas and like, and with things that I love to do, like,
yeah,
that I really enjoy doing, like writing and gardening and things like that. And I have these plans in my mind and the ideas are there and they're solid and I'm good at these things
yeah.
and then just nothing.
And then the execution is not there. And I do want to say it's not just you. I've experienced it as well, which is why I came to this topic. And it's something that a lot of people resonate with. And the reason it's not just you and it's really everyone, and I'll kind of go into how this works, is the part of the brain that creates wants and desires, it works separately from the part that allows us to act on that desire. So this
Mm.
is a really key idea to understand. So I'll say it one more time. The part of the brain that creates the desires works independent of the part that allows us to act on it. So we have one part of the mind that's creating wants. So it's creating this desire for you to do the gardening, to do the different things that you want. And it doesn't check to see if you have the time, energy, resources, or even the ability to do it. It just simply creates wants. Like this part of the brain, it wasn't meant to check those things. It was just to produce wants. And in many ways, this part of the brain is like an on off switch that's just triggering wants. And then we have this other part of the brain, which I call resistance, which checks to see if the want is achievable, achievable for us, if it's safe, and all of that. And if this part doesn't give the green light, we cannot act. So it's really
Mm,
important to understand is the brain can both create a desire for something and at the same time keep us from going after it. And for a long time, I used to think whoever created humans, whether it was God, aliens, or evolution, must have been really sick and twisted because how could they do that to us? Like, how could they create this burning desires and then keep us from going after them and having us sit in that pain? But
yeah.
it makes sense when you look at it from this perspective. And so the way to go a little bit deeper, so anytime we do have a desire, it gets evaluated by resistance using a whole host of criteria. And if the desire is not in line with any of the criteria, the brain will prevent action.
Mm,
And so it really helps to kind of think about standing before a panel of judges or board of directors. Any decision that comes up must go through them. And if even one of the members is against the idea, it will not pass. Now, what's even more key to understand is that both parts can get in the way. The parts that create wants can get in the way, and the parts that create resistance can get in the way. And it's hard to imagine that our own wants can get in the way of our wants, but it can because, like I said, our wanting mechanism is completely unrestrained. It's creating endless wants all the time. So it doesn't check to see if we have the time, energy, and resources. It simply creates wants. So in your case, you said there's all these things that you want to do. Well, one of the challenges you may be having is because you want to do so many things, your brain doesn't feel like it has a time for it or that you will be able to make progress and it just doesn't allow you to do any of it. So that challenge is coming from our want. And then the resistance, it really helps to understand the criterias that resistance uses to decide if whether we should do something. And before I get into just a little bit, stop me if I'm talking too much because this stuff kind of goes deep. And if you have any questions or anything like that, just feel free to interrupt me.
okay. Well, we love deep on this podcast, so go as deep as you would like to go. And I'm so fascinated to understand that the side of our brain that
Creates wants.
creates the desires can also block us. But I do understand what you're saying in that with so many things that you desire to do, that can just kind of muddy the water, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll kind of
Dive
talk about,
in.
yeah, I'll talk about that first then, because this is a really important concept that doesn't get talked about. So people
Mhm.
don't understand that their own desires are actually the very thing that's holding them back. And one of them has to do with what I just mentioned, which is the brain is creating all sorts of desires all of the time. So
Mhm.
before you can start on one thing, the brain is creating desires for other things to chase. And so we see something and we want it. We hear about something, we want that too. And oftentimes we don't have to hear or see anything. Our brain is just creating these wants. And if a person were to kind of sit down and write all the wants that they have, just free flowing, I would bet it would be at least several pages. It's just that they don't realize it. And because they have several pages of wants inside, their brain just doesn't know where to start.
Right.
And that's one challenge of the wands. There's other challenges. For example, some people have what I call a specific want, where they don't just want success, but a specific kind of success.
Mhm.
They have a specific outcome in mind, and nothing more or less will do. And this is a pattern we see a lot in relationships where a guy doesn't just want a guy or girl, but a specific guy or girl. And although all the signs are pointing to the fact that this guy or girl won't be healthy or fulfilling, they want that one person and can't think about anything else.
Mhm.
And then, so when we get hooked on something very specific, that creates a challenge as well. And then there's also what I call a high want, where a person wants to be the next Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, or Mark Zuckerberg, and they're shooting for that right out of the gate. And it's too much of a change that the brain can't help but create resistance. And what I mean by that is a lot of times when we want something, we don't necessarily look at what that want, what that change will mean. The people we have to give up, the new people we have to deal with, the risks and challenges that come with it. We see the end result and want it back.
Mm,
But resistance does look at those things. And if there's too much of a gap between where you are to where you want to go, resistance will arise and you won't be able to do that thing. So these are just some of the challenges. It goes even deeper. But I do want to kind of talk about resistance now. So anytime we do have a desire, that desire gets analyzed by resistance to see if we should do it. And so there's a lot of criteria as resistance goes through. Some of the more commonly known ones include things like beliefs and comfort zones. And I'll quickly go over what I mean by that. So if a person doesn't believe something is possible, then their brain isn't going to let them do it. That makes
mm,
sense. Now, a person can think that something is possible, but they might not think it's possible for them. And when I say not possible for them, this is like a belief that is really deep into the unconscious where they don't even see it.
right.
And so they go after that thing, but that belief that's saying it's not possible for them is putting the brakes in their life. And they're just wondering, well, why can't I do this thing? Well, and that's one criteria. Another criteria is comfort zone. The way the brain works is that it likes the familiar over the unfamiliar. So anytime we do something, it means going, doing some, moving out of our comfort zone in some way. So
Hmm.
especially if we're doing something new. And because the brain likes familiar, it will hold us back without telling us that it's holding us back, just so it doesn't have to deal with the consequences of what the new is. So that's a couple of the criteria, but these criteria go pretty deep. One of them has to do with authority issues. So authority issues relate to our unconsciously held attitudes toward authority figures such as parents, principals, priests, police officers, and even personal development coaches and mentors like ourselves. And so what happens is when if a person grows up in an environment where they're constantly being told what to do and what not to do and how to do it and how not to do it, at a certain point their brain gets fed up and doesn't want to listen to anything anyone tells them or any advice they give them. Even if they grow up and want to do those things and it will actually be useful and helpful to do it, they can because this authority response kicks in. And
Mm,
so they may want to go out and, diet, exercise, and get fit. But if they were growing up and they had a lot of people telling them to eat better or eat healthier and whatever, and they built an authority issue response, even as an adult, it's going to be hard for them to do it. And a lot of times when resistance kicks in, it doesn't tell us that it's stopping us. It's not saying, hey, D, this thing that you're trying to do, well, it goes against your beliefs, so I can't let you do it. That's not what resistance does. It shows up other ways. And a lot of times, as we just are not able to do it, it feels like there's an invisible wall in front of us.
mhm.
Oftentimes, it feels like we're paralyzed and we can't move forward. And then there are other ways that it manifests. So, and again, these are just a couple of criteria I've given to help people understand what I'm talking about. But there's even more criteria. And if you like, I can kind of go into that.
Yeah, I would like to just acknowledge the authority aspect of things because I never thought
Yeah,
about that before, but I can see very clearly when you talk about it how that could be a real issue. Like, I'm
yeah,
going to do what I want my way,
exactly.
and sometimes that is not the best thing for us at all. It's counterproductive in so
Yeah,
many ways. So I just wanted
yeah,
to acknowledge that. So thank you for bringing that up because I feel like there's a lot of people that just heard that. They're going to deeply resonate with that and recognize it in
yeah.
themselves.
Yeah, and I think this is a big one. And I have traveled to over 100 countries, and having seen so many different cultures and backgrounds, I was, I kind of noticed certain nuances of different cultures and backgrounds. And one of the things I've noticed here in the US is there's a lot more of that authority issue. Like,
Mm,
don't tell me what to do. I'm going to do things my way. And it's actually ingrained into our media. So when
Mhm.
you look at a lot of the songs, like a perfect example would be John Bon Jovi's hit song that came out in 1998, I Did It My Way.
Yes.
That is a microcosm of majority of mainstream music. It is very kind of anti-authority, doing it
Mhm.
my way, going against the norm, and it kind of ingrains into us. And because you do resonate with it, I want to go a little bit deeper about authority issues. And the way authority issues works is, like I said, if growing up, we had a lot of people telling us what to do, we have a hard time doing it. And the thing about authority issues is that it can last a long time. We can hold resentment to our grave. So, what that means is that to this day, in this very moment, we may have a hard time stopping television or media because not everyone in the past telling us to stop watching television or media. We may think we enjoy television or junk food, but it's because we're resisting some authority in our lives. Or we still drink, smoke, and get high to give the big FU to all the people who said it's bad for you. And then it also works the opposite way, where we may not have done well in school because of all the teachers telling us to study. We may be resistive to being on time because someone at some point in our lives was always on our case about being timely. Or we may be resisting diet or exercise because an overbearing father or mother wanted it so badly for us. And what's really interesting about authority issues is that oftentimes we're trying to hurt the other person when we're not doing it. We're trying to
Mhm.
like hurt the people who told us that we should do this by not listening to them. But authority issues hurt no one else but ourselves. So when we don't listen to the teacher, it doesn't actually affect her grades, it affects ours. When we don't listen to our parents, it doesn't really affect their health, it actually affects ours. And what's also what I've noticed with authority issues is oftentimes we are doing it to outsmart the people who told us what we should do. Like, I'm still going to figure out a way to be successful, even though you're saying I have to do this. I'm not going to do it and still get that result. And oftentimes we're the ones that look like the fool because more often than not, the advice they're giving us is sound advice that's going to help us, but we're trying to circumvent them and do it on our own, and we just create a lot more problems for ourselves.
Mhm.
And so this is one of the reasons, one reason of many that that resistance can come up for a person.
Yeah, wow. Like I'm sitting here listening to you talk
Mm.
about this, and I can see where this has played out in my own life. It's
Yes,
really because I was raised very religious, and
yes,
I acted out not now as an adult, but when I was
yeah,
younger, because I was told you've got to dress this way, and like
yeah,
I wasn't allowed to wear pants, and I had to wear dresses because I was raised Pentecostal, and I couldn't do so many things. So those were things that I mean, like I ran away from home when I was
yeah,
16 and, I did some drinking. I never became an alcoholic or anything, but those were things that weren't good for me and did not
yeah,
have great outcomes. Like hangovers are just not something I enjoy for
yeah,
one thing.
yeah,
So I can see where that's played out in my own life. So I find that very, very interesting. And I'm
yeah,
excited to see what kind of comments people leave about this episode, whether or not they resonate so deeply with this like I do because I see it
yeah.
in myself when you're talking about it. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it's crazy because like you saw the effects of alcohol, you didn't like it, but
Mhm.
there was a part of you that kept doing it, and I would suspect a part of it was because there was some resistance you had to the people in your life growing up. I'm assuming your parents telling
Yes.
you what to do and what not to do and how to do it and how not to do it.
Mhm.
And so, what I do say is one of the challenges for us humans to come together as a society is this authority issue, because in a way, we're built to not listen to what others are telling us to do. And so, a lot of the challenges that teachers, police officers, judges have is they want to do good, they're trying to give good advice, But in giving advice, it creates opposite outcome because the person just goes, well, you're telling me to do this, so I'm going to do the exact opposite. And
Yeah.
it really comes down to this one aspect of resistance. But there's another aspect too that's related to authority issues that I don't get a lot of chance to talk about in these podcasts. So I'm going to bring it up now, and I think you might enjoy it. So another reason resistance comes up, and it's because people are trying to be different. And to understand what I mean, again, as I mentioned, I've traveled to over 100 countries, and this has allowed me to see various nuances that different cultures and nationalities have. And another thing I've noticed about this culture is that everyone is trying to be different. Everyone and their mothers, whether it's by wearing different shoes, different clothes, watching different shows, eating a different diet, or doing a different exercise. And in fact, it's actually ingrained into our media because it's the guy that's different that gets the attention, success, and the girl. And it's also in our advertisements because they're constantly encouraging us to be different by buying their product. So, what happens is if a person sees themselves or identifies themselves as being different, then their brain will prevent them from doing anything that will make them conform to the norm. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
So, if they say, if a person sees themselves as different because they don't do the 9 to 5, then eventually, like let's say they're in a financial struggle and a 9 to 5 would help, their brain wouldn't allow them to do it because they see themselves as different, and going into a 9 to 5 job would mean conforming.
Mm.
And this plays out in a lot of ways where people, you hear themselves say, oh, I don't watch Netflix, I watch Hulu. I don't watch this show, I'm different, I watch that show. I don't do this, I do that. And what I tell people is that there's nothing wrong with being different. And in some cases, it can be helpful, especially in business. If you're different, you can stand out from the competition. But a lot of people are trying to be different in very limiting ways. So they might see a jock or someone financially successful and be like, oh, I don't want to be like that. I'm different. And now they're creating a hurdle for themselves for having a fit body or financial security because now they identify themselves as being different. Does that make sense?
Hmm. It does.
Yeah.
It's a little bit complicated. I can see that some people listening might have a struggle understanding what you're saying, but I feel like I get it. It's it reminds me of the money block because I know the money mindset
Yeah.
is one of the most difficult ones in my experience to shift.
Yeah.
And I feel like the reason is because so many people feel like rich people are a certain way. They're
Yes.
snobs, they did nefarious things to get their money, they're selfish and greedy and all of those things. So they're different, right? So they because they equate that having money with those characteristics and they feel like they're different than that, they don't allow the money to come in because they think that's the defining factor to have
Yes.
money. So that's
Yeah.
like the most powerful example that came to my mind listening to you talk about this.
Yeah.
Am I on point?
In some respects, we're kind of talking about two different things, but one part it is that because a lot of times if we say see someone who's successful and then assume that it's because that they're this way or that way
Mm-hmm.
and this and that are negative qualities they've associated, then it's going to be hard to attract that success because the brain is going to assume that, oh, then that means that I'm going to be selfish and greedy. And so because I don't want to be that, I push money away. So
Right.
yeah. And then, but the different equation is it's a little nuanced, but it's a little different because we're trying to separate ourselves, not necessarily because we see negative quality in someone else,
Mm-hmm.
but just so we can feel like we're not the same as someone else. Does that make
Why do
sense?
you feel like that's so important to us? Because I feel like some people want to conform, like they do this kind of copycat thing, and then and they're not their authentic selves. It's like they're afraid to do that.
Yeah.
But why do you
It,
feel like some people feel the need to be different, to have that? Like, I feel like we label things so like ridiculously.
yeah,
It's just crazy. We feel that's such a need to label things. But why do you feel that it is that people need that label of being different?
it's complex. So the fundamental answer is because they're desiring attention and affection. And so they feel like they need to be different to stand out. So at the most basic fundamental level, they're wanting to stand out. They're not trying to separate themselves from others. They're actually wanting more attention and affection from others. But they're doing it by separating themselves. Now,
Mm.
why does that drive come in? I really do believe a lot of it plays out in our media and culture. You know, when I was growing up, I watched a show called Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You
Yes, I
know,
did too.
yeah. And so you know what I'm talking about. Like this guy wore the jacket backwards and
Hmm.
he was different from everybody. Everyone was straight laced, studious in this really nice school that he went to, but he came off very different, a lot more loud and um, I don't know what the word is, but and again, his jacket, while everyone was conforming to a certain look, he was doing completely different. But the key thing to understand about it was he got the attention, he was
Hmm.
getting a lot of success, and he also got the girl. And it just plays out in a lot of movies. It's that one guy that's different that gets the attention, gets the success, and then gets the girl. And if it's a girl in the movie, gets the guy. And so as we're growing up, we're learning that, oh, wow, if I'm wanting this thing, I need to stand out. And it's all unconscious. So now they start to act different. And again, it's also in our advertisements. It's in our commercials. It's literally, it's called, there's a concept called subtext. So when we're watching or reading content or consuming media, whether it's written or visual, there's what's being said, and then there's an underlying message that isn't communicated as directly that we're picking up.
Yes.
And so a lot of advertisements are really encouraging people to be different by buying their products. They're saying you need to be different. If you buy this product, you'll be different. And so there's this kind of like ingrained. And then to add to it, because a lot of people are trying to be different, just by the nature of being humans, we pick up the thoughts, habits, behaviors, and beliefs of others.
Hmm.
So then we're noticing people are acting that way. So we start acting that way, and it kind of just becomes something that just becomes cultural. Well, now we're trying to be different. And again, it's kind of ironic because a lot of times we're trying to be different is so we can stand out and we want to stand out so we can get the attention and the success and the girl. And in many ways, it's actually counterproductive because we're actually separating ourselves from people. Does that make sense?
Hmm. It does. So,
Yeah.
what would you suggest for people to do? Because I feel like this is like an authenticity thing, because we don't feel safe to be our authentic self. So, what would
Yeah.
you suggest and recommend for people to do to help them be more comfortable in their own skin so that they can be completely authentic?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is to notice your need or drive to be different. And it doesn't always necessarily mean by going against the mainstream. So, for example, if a person hangs around people who listen to alternative music, they might say, "Oh, I'm different and listen to mainstream."
Mhm.
If they hang around people who do yoga, it's like, "Oh, I'm different because I do Pilates." If, you know, we have so many different diets now, paleo and all that, it's like, "Oh, I'm different. I don't do that." So, kind of notice that first. The second thing, and this can really help people get that different mindset out, is I was working with a client who had some resistance, and I could tell it was because he was trying to be different. And so I told them, I'm like, yeah, but you wear pants and you're wearing a shirt and you live in a house and you have a TV and you drive a car and you speak English, things that everyone does. And so we like to think we're different, but we are much more similar than we would like to admit. Yeah, sure, we might watch a different show on the TV, but the fact that we're actually watching a show makes us similar to everyone who's watching a show.
Hmm.
Um, and we might not have a 9 to 5, but we still have a job, which makes us similar to anyone who has a job. And so trying to be different is, in a lot of ways, we're fooling ourselves. And then I was actually on a podcast yesterday, and a woman was telling me about how she used to work a lot of dark clothes and she got associated with the goth
Hmm.
community. And, goth is, they're trying to be different. But then what she said is like, yeah, but you guys are all wearing black. So you guys are all the same. And
Right.
so our attempt in trying to be different is more futile than anything. One. Two is, again, to realize why you're doing it. If you're doing it because it's advantageous and it gets you what you want, then it's good. But if you're doing it and it's creating more challenges, then I would say reconsider it, because there's no need to unnecessarily create challenges just so you can hold on to this identity of being different, which really, like I said, is futile because you're doing so many other things that makes you the same.
Hmm.
And the reason I use the word challenges is because in an attempt to be different, people will create more challenges for themselves. For example, instead of just going to, doing studying, getting a good job, earning good money, they want to be different and do it their own way. And it creates a lot more challenges in trying to do it own way. And yeah, sometimes they'll have success, but most people don't. Or instead of saying, well, I'm different and I don't exercise, and then like dealing with health challenges, just let go of the fact that you're resisting. Um, you're making things more difficult than necessary just because you want to hold on to this identity that, again, just goes back to being futile.
Do you feel like people realize that it's holding on to an identity? And is it actually always holding on to an identity? Or is there some other sort of resistance there? And I ask this question because of my own personal journey with exercise. And
Yeah,
it's not that I don't want to do it, it's not that I don't know that it's good for me. And I've been doing better about it. So I'm really proud of myself right now over
yeah,
that. But, it's like so many people drink, let's take soda for an
yeah,
example, and they know that it's horrible for their bodies. There's so much sugar in it. And if you're drinking diet sodas, there's all these, well, there's chemicals in it either way, but there's all these artificial sweeteners that are terrible for your body. And we know these things, they're either not good for us or they are good for us, but we simply can't or won't make ourselves stop doing it, or in the case of exercise, start doing it.
yeah. So can you repeat that question?
So is it always that we're identifying with it? I think,
Yeah.
like it's an identity thing, or is
So
it
identity.
something different?
So as I mentioned, when we have a desire, that desire gets filtered by resistance using a whole host of criteria.
Hmm.
And some of the criterias are what I kind of mentioned: authority issues, trying to be different, but there are other things at play as well. And
Hmm.
so it doesn't come down to identity. It does come down to other things. And I can give another example of what could come up for a person. So another reason that resistance comes up has to do with what I call core needs or core pains.
Mm.
And so we humans are have all have all sorts of needs, like the need for love, attention, affection, and physical contact. And some of these needs are deeply ingrained into us, like the need for a mother's love or a father's guidance. They're so deeply ingrained that when we don't receive it, it creates pain, a lot of pain. The
Mm.
kind of pain that can make a person go crazy. That's how
Yeah.
deeply ingrained these needs are. Now, if growing up, these needs aren't met, and the brain realizes these needs can't be met, won't be met, or is too painful or dangerous to be met, it will prevent us from going after these needs. Makes sense, right?
Hmm.
But because they're core needs, the need doesn't go away, it just gets louder and stronger. But because the brain feels that these needs can't be met, it feels it has no other choice but to distract us from the pain. And one of the ways it distracts us is by making our lives difficult, challenging, and keeping us from finishing anything we start. So our focus is always on problems and not the pain. And I have
Mhm.
a really powerful story to share about this. I knew someone who wanted nothing more in life than the love of his dad, but his dad never gave it to him, and it hurt him. It hurt him a lot. So
Yeah.
much so that he lived a hectic life, living paycheck to paycheck, never being able to make ends meet. His brain did that because his brain felt because he had this need that his brain felt could never be met. And so to distract him from the pain, it made his life very challenging. So the focus was on that. So this is another reason resistance will come up that doesn't have to do with being different or identity. It's so it can distract us from a pain that we feel that can never be met. So this could be something else that comes up as well. And then there's also things related to habit. So if we have become habituated to drinking soda, even though we know that it's bad for us, it's just a habitual response that we just go to as our default. And so this could be a reason why we move toward soda. Or another reason for resistance has to do with what I call people. And this is an obvious one. We humans are pack animals. We
Mhm.
are built to live and survive in a pack. And so much so, majority of our intelligence actually didn't come to help us survive in the wild. It actually doesn't take a lot of intelligence to survive in the wild. Like ants and bees that have brains so small we can't see them. They do well to fight off predators and things like that. Our intelligence actually came so we could um, become more social and so we can maneuver within the pack. And as a result, because being in a pack was so important, the brain evolved with certain characteristics to make sure that we stay in the pack. And so it's really important for us to kind of conform in certain ways. And if we're seeing a certain behavior being done, the brain will naturally latch onto that, even though it's not healthy. And this is what I mean. Loneliness is very hard on the body.
Mhm.
Studies show that loneliness is like the damage it does physically, the physical damage, we're not talking mental, emotional, is like smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. So if the brain, to the brain, if loneliness is so damaging, it will conform to other unhealthy behaviors just to keep people around. And
Mhm.
because sodas are so common and everyone's drinking it, even though we know it's unhealthy, a more deeper primal part of our brain is that as well. It helps us connect, it helps us conform, it helps us be part of the group and tribe. So we'll continue doing it. And this is
Mm.
where advertisements come in. A lot of advertisements, they play on a lot of these things that I've mentioned. They play on our authority issues to get us to do things. They play on our need to connect and be in a tribe to do these unhealthy behaviors. In fact, there was this one
Wow.
person who talked about a study saying that a lot of our issues to diet isn't a food thing, it's actually a social thing. And so that's another way resistance shows up. So in the beginning of this podcast, I talked about there's all these criterias. It really helps to look at all these criterias to see which one is really got the hold on us and work on it at that level. And this might be a good time to explain why a lot of times people have challenges where they want to change, they want to improve, and they go out and take advice, but it doesn't work for them. But then they see that advice works for someone else. Well, the reason it worked for that person is because it was addressing their resistance, and
Mhm.
and that person's own resistance is something different, and they need tools and solutions that work on that. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense to me. And it's
Yeah.
one of the things that I have noticed lately in the posts that I see on social media is that there seems to be a theme of coaches and leaders telling people they're doing something the wrong way.
Yeah.
You're praying the wrong way. And it really bothers me a lot because of what you just said. What works for the person next to me is going to be different than works for me. And it
Yes.
doesn't mean that either one of those things is wrong. They just work differently.
Yeah.
So
And it
that
and it
really is impactful.
yeah, thank you. And it does come down to the resistance. One thing works for one person because it's addressing the resistance they have. And what's really interesting, and I'm sure many of your listeners can resonate with this because this was an issue for me. So in my journey, I was trying to do a lot of work to move past the blocks I had. So somebody would say, "Oh, it's the beliefs that you got to work on." I worked on my beliefs, and although I might have helped, I was still stuck. And then it was identity. Got to change your identity. I worked on the identity. I didn't come to the concept of authority issues until much later. And even then, it wasn't as deep as the way I described it, and I only kind of scratched the surface of how extensive I can talk about authority issues. And then I worked on my authority issues. So a lot of times we'll see somebody who tries this one technique and gets this success, and they can kind of move forward. And then another person does the same thing, and they don't get that level of success, and they're still stuck. And the difference is that one person probably just had one resistance holding them that back, whereas another person had a list of resistance that they need to go through. So yeah, that one thing worked for him and it didn't work for that, but they still needed to do that, but they still need to do a couple more things to really get to that point. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it really is. It's deep.
It,
And it's because we all have these different life experiences, there nothing is the same. Even two children that grow up in the same
yeah,
household have different experiences because their personalities are different. So it just can't be the same,
it
so that
can't. Yeah.
creates different issues and resistances. I like that better than blocks, I think, in
Yeah.
each individual person.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we humans are pretty complex. And so there are causes of resistance that one couldn't intuitively come up to 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 come up on their own as what's holding them back. Like when I was growing up, I would have never thought authority issues was playing into my life. Again, I said I came to that concept much later, only after I tried a lot of other things that weren't working or giving me as good of a result that I was seeking. And then it goes even deeper. The core needs, like authority issues, is being talked about, but the core needs is not being talked about at all. In fact,
Right.
when I bring up to people, it really resonates at a core level for them, but no one's really talking about it. And that was something that I came to after learning about the authority issues. So what I'm trying to say is that it can seem like when we want to do something and we can't, that we're not good enough, we don't have what it takes, or we just don't have discipline or we're lazy. And but that's not the case, is that there is a part of our brain that's designed to hold us back and it's actively working to hold us back. And some of these things are really complex that we couldn't just intuitively come to on our own. So it's not something that people should feel bad about.
Mhm.
And there is a challenge because some of these reasons are complex. How do we even uncover it? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I
So
do.
yeah. And so there was a there was something I heard someone say once that really resonated with me. It's tough being human. And now we know why.
I say the human factor is strong some days. That's how I put it.
Yes,
Because it's that, and we're in this experience, right? We are in it and we are going to be in it until we hit the dirt, as I put it. So making the best of it and creating a life for ourselves that is as comfortable as we can make it and doing the things that bring us joy is really important, I feel.
I think so.
And I found it very interesting when you were talking about how we trade one pain for another to distract ourselves from the pain. That's the way it kind of worded itself in my mind. It's kind of like the old adage, of hitting your hammer with a thumb to get rid of your headache. When it doesn't really get rid of your headache, it just
Yeah.
distracts you from the fact that your head is hurting because now your thumb hurts more than your head.
Yeah.
So, what would be your one core piece of advice to help people not do that thing of trading one pain for another?
This is a big one because I think in a lot of ways we are doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Even when we're watching television, scrolling through social media, playing video games, or drinking, we don't realize it, but we're trading one pain for another. And although in the moment it may seem like these things that I just mentioned, the television, the video games are pleasurable, but they're actually painful because once we move away, um, because we become so accustomed to getting that dopamine rush so quickly that when we're not getting it, we create pain from ourselves. And so, in a lot of ways, we are doing a lot of things by trading off one pain for another. Even people who work, people who are successful, they're likely, so that whole core pain thing, a lot of times people who live a unsuccessful lifestyle is because their brain is having them avoid a core pain. Well, it can also be for people who are successful. A lot of these A types and go togetters, they're not doing what they're doing to try to get somewhere. They're doing what they're doing to avoid their core pain. That's how their brain has them avoid it. So it's to
Yeah.
kind of realization is a big part of overcoming resistance is realize why they're doing what they're doing. And the one thing I will say is one of the reasons I can get success to my clients and my customers so quickly is because I work within the principles of the mind and body. I've traveled to over 100 countries. I've done so many things um, myself to understand the principles. And so I'm not, if you notice, I don't do a lot of motivation and inspiration because that actually goes against the principles. And one of the most fundamental principles I can teach somebody is that there's no pleasure without pain. And to help you and your listeners understand what I mean by that, I'm going to share a really cool story. So I mentioned I've traveled to 100 countries, and in the beginning of my journey, I actually started in Colombia. I started in Medellin, Colombia, then I went to Santa Marta, then to Cartagena, and from Cartagena, I took a catamaran. It was a 4-day journey to Panama. And it was during a time when none of the sailors go because the waters are really rough. But I'm like, I'm here, so I'm going to do it. In Panama, I was there for a few weeks. Went from Panama City to Bocas del Toro, took a ferry into Costa Rica, and then from Costa Rica, I went to San Juan, the capital. And it was a 6-month, 6-week long journey, zero hot showers. It was cold showers the whole time and no showers, or I was bathing in the ocean and things like that. And then when I was in the capital of Costa Rica, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to pay a few extra dollars to stay in a nicer hostel that had a hot shower. Not only did it have a hot shower, but it had two knobs, one for hot and one for cold, so I could control the temperature of the water, something I didn't have for the first 6 weeks. And I I felt like I hit the lottery when I had that hot shower. Like it was one of the most exhilarating feelings I've had. And I remember like jumping on Facebook and telling everyone about it, right? So why was that such a pleasurable experience? Because I've had hot showers before. In fact,
Right.
I had so many, I felt like it was my God-given right. Reason that particular hot shower felt so good is because I went through the pain of not having one for 6 weeks. And because of that, I really appreciated it. And and so a lot of what I focus on is not getting pleasure first, but putting in the work. So when I achieve something, I get the pleasure then.
Mhm.
Because this principle, you can't cheat this principle. If we try to get pleasure without pain, we will experience the pain after. And it goes back to what I said about When we go on social media and television, we get tons of dopamine release just from sitting and doing nothing. But then
Right.
we do have to pay the price once the show is over and we have to go to the real world and there isn't this, amazing visuals giving us dopamine and now it creates pain. If we get, energy from coffee, we have to deal with the pain with once the caffeine wears off and we crash. If we get all that pleasure from sugar, we have to deal with the pain with the weight that we gain or the sugar crash. If we get
Mhm.
pleasure from drugs and alcohol, because it's fun, we have to deal with the hangover. And this is how addictions form is the the brain trying to avoid paying the price of the pain. And this is what I mean. So let's say we drink alcohol and it feels pleasurable, but the next day we get a hangover. To to avoid the pain, we drink more and then we
Right.
get the pleasure. And then now we're going to deal with a worse hangover. But then to avoid that, we drink again. And so this is how addictions form. And this is one of the most fundamental principles that a person can learn because if they can understand this, they can make decisions that help them not go after easy pleasure because they know they're going to have to pay the price and that they can do the work to get the pleasure that they're ultimately seeking. I
Yeah.
hope that helps people understand.
Yeah, we have such a resistance to pain, don't we? Like we humans, we don't like to feel those heavier emotions. So
Yeah,
we seek to circumvent that in some way with all kinds of things. You've already mentioned quite a few of
yeah,
them. And
yeah.
it's why do you, I mean, I know it doesn't feel good, but beyond the not feeling good, what do you feel is our human resistance to pain, whether it's physical or emotional or whatever?
Okay. So this goes in in line with the defense mechanism. And to really appreciate where I'm going to take us, it really helps to understand we humans are complex. The human
Mhm.
brain is really the pinnacle of complexity in the known universe, like more complex than stars and planets. And in our complexity, we are built with various drives and things that may seem like they don't help or counterintuitive, but it's just to help us move about the world. And so there's a lot of things that can be destructive, but was really meant to be helpful. And
Mhm.
so the defense mechanism, we all know we have a defense mechanism, and that defense mechanism is designed to protect us. Though, what is it really protecting us from? Is it mistakes? Is it failure? Is it rejection? Is it death? Well, in my model, it's really pain, whether that's physical pain, mental pain, or emotional pain. And physical pain is obvious, getting cut, scraped, bruised, and it's obvious why the brain or the defense mechanism would want us to protect us from it. Mental pain actually comes from mental activities like thinking, learning, and problem solving. Certain activities like math, reading, and science, it puts a strain on the brain. And that strain is enough to create pain. And then there's emotional pain. Emotions are some of the most painful experiences we humans can have. In
Mhm.
fact, the studies show that it can be just as painful as physical pain. Now, the defense mechanism is kind of like our wanting mechanism. It's more like a on-off switch. And the way it works is if there is pain or potential for it, block it. So it doesn't reason or use logic to see if a pain is going to be helpful, like healing pain
Mhm.
or pain required for building a habit or growth. Like I said, it's an on off switch. If there is pain or potential for it, block it. So if we're doing something that causes pain, like we're doing something new, like we want to become a writer, so we're learning to write, but because we haven't become habituated to writing, starting off is painful. So the defense mechanism is like, oh, there is pain, stop it. So it prevents us from moving forward and developing that habit. And it
Mhm.
just comes down to because it doesn't necessarily use logic or reason to see if that painful is going to be, if that pain is going to be helpful in the future. And so then we have to actually step in and reason for ourselves, be like, yes, this is painful, but I have seen other people get through it, and now they can do the work without pain. So I'm sure I can as well. I just have to go through the pain.
Mm.
So we have to step in and use that logic. I hope that helps you understand why we are resistant to pain. It's not necessarily we're choosing it, it's just an automatic process that's happening. And because this process is unconscious, we didn't realize how it was working. We just assume that because the brain doesn't want us to do something, doesn't want us to do something that we shouldn't. But now that we understand how this process works, that it'll stop us from doing something that has immediate pain that could have future benefit, and that we can use logic to override that, then hopefully people can make better decisions when they are confronted something with pain.
Yeah, I love that. That was beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you were
Yeah,
talking and I was like, yes, yes, like yes to all the things you just said.
yeah,
That was absolutely a beautiful explanation to my question. I
yeah.
love
Okay, awesome. I'm
that.
glad.
Thank
And if I can add one more thing,
you. Yes.
is so we humans are complex, both mind and body,
Mhm.
and we think it should be easy to just do something. Like if I want to go pick up this water bottle, it's just a matter of thinking about it, moving my hand, and 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 drinking out of it.
Mhm.
But everything that we do or everything that is easy to do, we need to have a habit or build a muscle for it. There was a point where this wasn't easy for us. You know, when we were
Right.
growing up, it was actually quite difficult. And
Yeah.
we learned it by doing it over and over. The point I'm trying to get at is most anything that anybody wants to do, they're gonna have to go through building the habit and muscle for it until it becomes comfortable. And if they haven't, it's gonna be annoying and painful. And they're just gonna have to go through that. It's almost everything that we do. Right now I have I do a lot of different activities that I really enjoy. I rock climb, I do salsa, I do bachata, I do yoga. I am picking up a little bit of DJing right now and all of that. And so I really push myself through these things. That's how I learn about what's going on for us internally. And all of these things weren't comfortable and easy for me. I mean, they were some of them were quite painful, especially when I was learning social dancing. Like if you met the people I was around when I was learning social dancing, they would have told you like Cam is a mean and angry guy because I would get really upset and frustrated when I couldn't pick up the moves or if I was leading a my partner and she wasn't doing what I wanted. And it was just because I didn't build a muscle for it. But
Right.
now that I've been doing it for a while, if you see my dancing, you'd be like, wow, this guy is so fluid and so natural. And I assure you, that wasn't the case. Like I had two left feet, no rhythm, had to do the repetitions to build it. And that's with anything that we do. And I think the more we can get into the habit of pushing through pain until we've developed the habit and muscle for things, the more things we can pick up and are able to do and do consistently. So to circle back to some of the questions you had about why can't I do these things, like you know how to do it, you're good at it, you probably just haven't built the muscle for it to
Mm.
do it consistently
Yeah.
where there isn't pain when you think about it. I
Yeah.
suspect some of those things just by thinking about it, like creates pain in your head.
Yeah, there's some a multi-layered thing going on there. And I have addressed it. I've gone inward on that multiple times. And I still, listening to you talk today, I can see some other things that I need to
Yeah,
dig into. One of the things I'm not afraid of is going inside and exploring. So,
yeah,
I do
yeah.
have a couple questions for you, Cam. One is I know you have traveled to 100 countries, which is phenomenal because you don't look old enough to have traveled to that many countries in your life. Um, what is the most profound and impactful experience that you have had, and where did you have it?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. And the way I respond to it is exactly how I responded to a podcast host who asked me that very question yesterday is it's hard to narrow down to one experience. It's like saying, what's your favorite song? There's so
Mm,
many songs that you like and they could be varying in, the complexities and tones, and they create feelings in different ways. And so, and and it changed. So in the beginning, when I was traveling, when something was a new and novel experience, I was like, oh, this is amazing. I can't imagine anything topping that. But as I continued to travel and had other experiences, it kept, I had like, oh no, this is the ultimate experience, or this is it. But I think what, if I were to kind of put it under the umbrella, my travels allowed me to interact with people of all shapes and sizes from all around the world. So anyone who followed my journey was like, wow, Cam, you really leave no stone unturned. And I got to experience a lot of indigenous cultures, like the Kuna in Panama, the Inuit in Greenland, the Maasai in Africa, Aboriginals in Australia, and indigenous in all part of the world. And I'm talking like your raw indigenous that are still living in essentially nature
Hmm.
and that. So I got to experience humans in their rawness, not affected by media and all of that. And I think that was like the most profound experience to like really connect to what it was to be human. And
Yeah.
I think it's been those experiences have been really foundational to my work because I decided I work on the on the principles of the mind and body. And I wouldn't have, I think, come to a lot of those principles had I not had the opportunity to experience human in its rawness. If I had just learned it from books and studies and stuff like that, I would have missed the mark in a lot of ways. And I do feel like a lot of coaches and people in personal development have missed the mark in a lot of ways because they're just kind of learning from what others have said and what
Hmm.
others have written. And they haven't really had the opportunity to fully connect to the human experience to know that a lot of the stuff is doesn't work, is burning people out, and it's actually counterproductive.
Hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. I actually got goosebumps when we were talking about that. Just that untainted is the word I'm going to use
Yeah.
experience of just being human and being basically one with nature and just
Yes.
surviving and thriving and finding the joys in things that we don't even look at
Yeah.
in our American culture anymore.
And and if you were trying to do that, you will be looked at as weird. I don't share this, but because we're going deep, I'm going to share it. I walk barefoot. In fact, yeah, perfect. And you see I wear suit and tie and stuff, but my shoes are almost no sole, so it gives me the barefoot experience where people think I'm wearing a sock, and I show them the bottom and it's barefoot. I sleep on the floor, no pillow. And a lot of my lifestyle is very similar to that. I don't talk about it because people would judge me.
Mhm.
And I and I live a very minimal life. I don't buy a lot of stuff, and if I am, I make sure I'm getting rid of something before I bring something new. Is because these experiences help me realize that it wasn't about more. It's actually the human brain becomes more freer and more happier with less.
Mhm.
And the reason I rock climb is because when I was in the rainforest and the jungles and stuff, I saw a lot of primates and the way they would move their hands and swinging, like that's what we were meant to do. And when I rock climbing, it's like I feel like I'm connecting to a deeper, more primal part of me. And
Mhm.
the reason I'm saying all this is because, prior to traveling, I wasn't happy. I had a lot of challenges and stuff like that. And I was listening to a lot of the information I was receiving, and it wasn't really helping. And then when I started connecting to something deeper and really connecting back to what we were, is where I started getting a lot more joy, becoming more optimistic, and really enjoying my life. You know what I'm saying? So it
Yeah.
does go back to that.
Yeah. I'm so happy for you that you have found that peace and happiness. I mean, like I can see it in your
Yeah,
energy. It's
yeah,
beautiful. And I love the walking barefoot thing. Like I do not wear shoes when I go to the park. I'm in a job now where I have to wear shoes, and it's like I'd be
yeah.
so much happier if I could just walk around here barefoot.
Uh,
But it's required to have shoes on. But and
you
I
can get,
actually had a little girl ask me when I was at the park the other day on the boardwalk, and she's like, "Why don't you have shoes on?"
yeah,
And I said, well, because I'm earthing. Do you know what that means? And she said, no. And I said, well, you'll know one day because I don't like to explain things in depth to children who aren't mine. Their
yeah,
parents might not want them to know certain things. So as I was walking away, I heard her ask her dad what earthing is.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
but we're not meant to have shoes on all the time. So I love that you do that.
yeah. And if I can add to that, the people who wear shoes are the ones who have feet and leg and posture trouble. The ones
Mhm.
that don't, like when I was in the indigenous, I mean, the things that they could do is pretty quite amazing. And once I shifted from doing no shoes, I can't tell you how much a lot of the challenges I had kind of went away. And if you notice, I'm in a standing desk, so I don't sit either. A lot of my like skeletal posture and back pains and all that really just stem from shoes and sitting.
Mm,
Now that I've
yeah.
cut both of them out, no need for doctors and physical therapy. Like I'm, yeah. So
Makes a huge difference. And
huge
my
difference.
second question for you, Cam, is I know you've written multiple books. If you could recommend one of your books for our listeners today, which book would it be and why?
Okay, I'm gonna recommend two only because a lot of people want the cookie, they want the quick fix, they want whatever, and you can get that from speed reading. Speed reading, the title is "Learn to Read a 200-page book in 1 hour," and it seems like an outlandish claim, but I'm very confident I can deliver, or at least double or triple many people's reading speed in a matter of minutes. And, and again, I'll work within the principles of the mind and body. And the reason I recommend that book is because it'll help a person not only increase their ability to take in information, but understand that information and remember it longer. And when we can do that, then we can read the other books and the other things that we need to do to move our lives forward. But the book I would really recommend if people had the time and wanted to go deep is my concentration book. It's
Mhm.
my 10th book. It's my proudest book. It's a book I spent the most time and put like my most, my entire soul into. And this book was actually the foundation for the concept of internal resistance. As I
Mhm.
was writing a chapter in this book, that's how the concept of internal resistance unfolded that I'm talking about now. And this is a really deep dive into the inner workings of the mind and body and what creates concentration and what takes it away, and increasing the things that improve our focus and removing the things that take it away. And I personally think there's no book else out there that goes into just what's going on for us internally like that book. And I think people would find it extremely valuable if they read it. So if you want the cookie, speed reading, learn to read a 200-page book in 1 hour. If you want to go deep, concentration, maintain laser sharp focus and attention for stretches of 5 hours or more.
Wow. That sounds amazing. That sounds
Yeah.
like the cookie to me. I've never heard it that way, but the concentration sounds like the cookie to me. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. And Cam, if people would love to work with you, where can they find you?
All right. So I've got three grifts for the people who stayed all the way until the end to listen to this. The
Oh, okay.
first is prompt engineering, three free guides. The first is prompt engineering for your mind. So the brain was the original ChatGPT, and you can prompt it like ChatGPT to not only give you solutions, but act on those solutions. So that's guide number one. Guide number two is how to build habits and behaviors essentially in your sleep. So we talked about habits and behaviors, and we talked a lot about wants and resistance and what gets in our way, but we didn't really go into how to kind of move past it.
Hmm.
This would be a great one to for an easy technique to kind of help us create the behaviors that we want without having to put in a lot of effort. And the third is a guide called End Procrastination and Sabotage, which is a really deep dive into this topic of internal resistance. They'll understand other challenges our wants create, other reasons resistance hold us back, and other tricks that resistance uses to keep us from moving forward. So they can get all three of that at camnight.com that they see right below my mic. And then if they want to work with me one on one, I think that's the best way to get the biggest shifts in the shortest time. Not only because of the topic, but I develop a technique that helps people where I can guide people into their unconscious. So we work on their specific resistance and challenges. And when we work on their specific thing, we can make shifts in just a few sessions. So, and that they can reach out to me at mentor@camnight.com.
Okay, perfect. That sounds beautiful. Thank you,
Yeah,
Cam, for coming on again today. And I
you're welcome.
appreciate this conversation so much. It's been really enlightening for me. And I know
Yeah,
that it has been for the listeners as well. So I appreciate you so much. Thank you for what you do. It's absolutely beautiful. I
yeah.
love it. And I'll have to have you back on again so we can get into some of these things a little deeper.
Yeah, it's interesting. I get more than 50% of the podcast hosts say we need to bring you on because there is a lot of depth to it. And I'm glad that
Yeah.
you enjoyed this conversation. I can kind of see it in your expression that, it filled in a lot of pieces that probably was missing and things.
Yeah.
So I really love when I can deliver that way. So I'm really happy that you feel that way.
Yes. Thank you so much. Hang out for just a second. I'm going to close this
Sure.
out. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on another episode of Spiritually Speaking. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I know you know at least one person who needs this message today. So thank you all. And until next time, I love you all.